Hi everyone, so here we are. We're ready to start our Mig-29 version 1 build. Okay, so as if you've watched the intro already, which I encourage you to do that first because then some of this will make sense to you. I've already printed off one set of plans on my printer here at home, and I've already taped those all together. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you the first part just to get you started of how I like to tape mine together. And then I'll just pause it, get mine all taped together, and then we'll come back. So getting the plans sorted out. I like to do this a little bit differently maybe than some other folks do, but I think that hopefully it'll make sense and it'll just make it a lot easier. So again, if you look at this sheet, the page layout, it kind of gives you the idea. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there'll be 6 sheets. So each sheet, I've already printed mine off. I've just got them in a pile here. So down, hopefully if your printer did everything properly, down in the bottom left corner there'll be a page number, so that'll take some of the guesswork out of it. So I like to start at the top. So page number 4, I don't really need to do anything with that. So page number 5, in order so that I can overlap it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut using pardon me, a nice sharp razor knife and a metal edge, straight edge, is I'm just going to cut just on the very inside of this black line right here, and then we're going to tape the two of them together. Make sure I've got my Scotch tape here. Okay, so here's essentially what we're going to do. Just going to lay this down, just line it up on the inside of the black line like that. Nice sharp blade in my knife, and just slowly go along. You don't want to press too hard or pull too fast, because then you can end up tearing the paper. Okay, so there we go, there's that. So then we just take it, and hopefully you'll be able to see here. So now I'm laying page 5 next to page 4. Just line up the edge so that it's on the black line, and then you should be able to see that the pieces are going together. This is my one of my elevons here. This is part of the wing plate. This is part of the nose. Okay, so once you're happy with that, then I just take some Scotch tape. Oop. Big piece of Scotch tape here. Ah! YouTubers curse. Alright, so let's do that again. That can be one of your problems if you try to get ambitious sometimes and use a big long piece of tape like I just tried to do. Alright, so let's lay that down. Boom, there we go. Okay, I've got a little bit of overlap. So next one we'll go with a slightly smaller piece. It doesn't necessarily have to be right edge to edge. Okay, so now for the next row, page 6. Page 6 is going to go down here below page 4, but in order to line those up, now what I'm going to do on page 6 is along the top here, this is being the top of the sheet, is I'm going to do the same thing, just cut on the very inside of the black line on the top, trim that off, okay, and then take that, again line that up, alright. You want it to be fairly close, but if it's off by a little bit, don't panic. We're gonna, you'll be able to fix that up as you're cutting it. So there we go. Attach that on. All right. Now page 7 goes next. So I'll just show you. This is the same thing is going to be for 8 and 9. I'm not going to show you how I do that. So again, like we did with page 5, we're going to trim the one edge inside the black line again, like that. Oops, see there you I'm showing you all the mistakes. That's good. So you shouldn't repeat them. I pulled a little hard there, tore it, but it's going to be fine. All right, so I've trimmed the edge for here, and then again, just like I did with page 6, I'm going to trim the top like this. That. Okay, and now you've got, you sort of line it up on the top and on the side. So that looks pretty good. And again, just some Scotch tape. Boom, just like that. And then down the center here. Okay, so that shows you how you get started, and then I'm just going to continue on. I'm just going to pause right now, and I'll get my page 8 and 9 connected, and then we'll have the two sets of plans, and then I'm going to show you how I like to cut these out to make my life easier before I start laying them down on the foam, okay? So I'll be right back. Alright folks, so I've got all my second set of plans taped together, and we're all ready to go. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to actually take a pair of scissors and just sort of cut around all of these pieces. It just makes it a lot easier for me once I've cut all the pieces out. Then when I get my foam out, I can sort of lay the pieces out like a piece of a puzzle and orient them so that when I put them down on the foam to start cutting the foam out, that I'm optimizing my foam and not wasting a whole lot of foam. Now I've purposely gone and highlighted some parts on each sheet here. So in orange. So this is going to be the front part of the wing plate. Obviously there's two halves, you know, one on each set of plans. And what we're going to do is, before we lay these down on the foam, is we're going to tape these two together along the very center, so that we're going to have one big piece on the front that's essentially going to look like this. Okay? And then what we're also going to do, and this is where the one modification that I'm going to make to this plane, because I think it's a lot easier to set up your elevons and your linkages and all that sort of stuff, which we'll see, is we're going to cut. This is sort of the back half of the wing plate, back half of the wing here, and this area here goes down the center behind the prop slot. I like to call this the back plate, and then of course you've got your elevon. And what we're going to do is we're going to tape all of those pieces together until essentially we get one piece like this. Okay, so then we're going to cut this out, and when we get to that point where I'll tape all these pieces of paper together first before we lay them down on the foam, then we've essentially got two big pieces for our wing. Now I suppose if you really wanted to, you could tape these all together and cut it out as one big piece. But the reason that I'm going to tape this, do this, is I want to be able to show you how you would butt these two pieces together. The other thing is, we're going to make this seam on our full-size plane, the seam where these two join, we're going to make that with epoxy. So it's going to give, in addition to the carbon that we're going to use in the wing, it's going to give some extra stiffness to the wing. And I'm just going to show you the technique that I use there, because you know, sometimes in other builds it's a handy way if you need to, you know, butt or splice two pieces together. Okay, so I'm just going to go get busy here next with my scissors, cut all these pieces out, tape the pieces together that I need taped together, and then we'll get ready for the next step, which is getting it laid down on the foam and start cutting out the parts. Okay, so I'll be right back. Alright folks, so we're back just finishing up here, prepping our plans. Now because one thing you have to do when you cut them out is, because essentially we've printed off two sets, so these, you know, these are actually sort of mirror. For example, these two pieces are mirror images of each other. So what I did was, when I cut them out, I just sort of left a little border, you know, a few millimeters all the way around on this one, and then I cut this one with just using my razor knife. I cut it right along the very edges of the outside, and I also cut out the slots. Because what we're actually going to do is, when we tape these together, you know, we're gonna tape them together essentially like that. So then when I cut this side out, I'm just going to cut the foam right along the very edge of the paper. I've also done the same for my elevons. So, you know, here will be my two elevons like that, and then same thing with the front part of the wing plate. Okay, So I'm just going to tape these together real quick, and I'm just going to kind of show you. I know this will be a little bit tedious maybe to watch, but I'm just going to kind of show you how this should be done. And again, just remember, we're just building a foam park jet here. You're not building a rocket ship. The other thing I should note, I've already taped these. Oh, here you can see. So here's a situation where on the back, where you've overlapped the pieces of paper, sometimes these little flaps here get in the way on the back side of the sheet. So then all I do is, if I can find, there it is, if I can find my Scotch tape, is I just take a little piece of Scotch tape again and just sort of tack that down on the back side. It keeps the little flap from getting caught on things, or worse yet, pulling them apart after you've already cut them out. So on the other pieces, I'll just show you here. I sort of like to leave, when I cut the foam out, I like to leave just a few millimeters sort of around. I find it easier to cut, most of the pieces if I can just sort of see the lines and follow those along. Now, obviously, because we printed out 2 sets of plans, you're going to end up with a couple of, duplicates of 2 pieces that you don't really need duplicates of. This is the bottom plate. This is essentially where the plane is going to land. So you can keep that around, and maybe even especially this is the nose or the fuselage. Obviously, this is going to be the nose. Is maybe hang on to this, because if you have a crash or whatever and you need to repair it, it helps to have you can just sort of cut yourself out a new piece of nose for the top, and if your bottom plate gets busted up too badly from landing or some heavy landings, and you can also just make yourself a new bottom plate as well. So just hang on to those. Don't throw those out. Just hang on to those. They could come in handy later on. Okay, so let's put the front part here together first. So what I did, anytime you can see here, like this front part of the wing plate obviously goes right up against the edge of the outside of the plans. So I always use, if I have to cut anything, like I did here with this piece, is I always cut on the very inside of the black line, just like we did when we taped the sheets together to make the plans. Okay, so here we're going to go, just lay it out, you're going to hear me use this term a lot, dry fit. Well, once we get the parts cut out, obviously we're gonna be dry fitting those before we glue them. So we just sort of get everything, nicely lined up there with the very edge of the piece where I've cut around the edge, right on the inside of the black line. And again, we're just going to tape this in to start off with. We're just going to tack it down with some tape in a couple of spots, just to keep it from flying apart on us. Okay, so there we go, and I'll just tape this bottom piece here as well. Okay, so there we go. So there we've got our piece, our one piece front part of the wing plate, prop slot, all that sort of stuff, with the holes cut out on the inside. Now this, you probably want to tape this further, which I'm going to do before I lay it down on the plans. This essentially, this is going to be a slot right here up here and down here, because that's where the fuselage piece is going to fit up through. So anyway, so that's essentially what we're going to do there. I'll finish taping mine together here before I start laying it out on the foam. Okay, so here we have the back half of the wing and the wing plate. So we're going to tape those. Let's tape these 2 pieces together first. Okay, so you can use this line here on the bottom. Obviously, I've cut this out exactly along the lines. So you can use this piece here along the bottom to line up the bottom half. I've left a little bit here on the top. You can trim that right off as well if you want to make it easier. But again, we'll just line that up. We can fix a lot of stuff. If there's a little bit of crookedness on the plans, we can fix that up a little bit while we're actually cutting the foam. So again, I'll just tack it down here with a piece of tape, and probably because it's such a long And a critical piece on the back here too. I'm also going to put a piece of tape. There we go. Okay, so there's that part. So now what I've done with my elevons, you can see here I've cut one all the way around exactly the way this. Imagine this was a piece of foam, and then this is going to be the other top piece. Now what I've done here so that I can tape these onto the back plate is I've already cut right along the edges. And because the way that this is designed, normally right here there would be a gap. This front piece here would actually be moving, and there would be a gap of about 1/4 of an inch right here to allow the elevon plate not to hit the push rod. I've just found that that's always a little bit of a tricky thing, and then you get it on there and you find out that it's binding or whatever. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to cut, or we're going to draw a line. Once we get these taped on, we're going to draw a line across right here. So this is actually going to be a fixed horizontal stabilizer, and it's going to stay on the back plate, and then the elevon will be a separate piece. Now don't worry about the fact that you're losing this much movement or this much moving surface area. The plane is going to have lots and lots of control authority anyway, even on elevons only. Okay? Now, because this was supposed to be a gap, I've already drawn a line here on this inside piece that sort of goes between these two engine nozzles, I guess, if you want. I've drawn in about 5 millimeters. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim that right now on both, because if otherwise you're going to end up with a bit of an overlap that might make it difficult to line up. And the other thing is that eventually, later on after we get the plane together, we want to make sure that there's plenty of clearance between those two pieces so that when the elevons are doing this, that they're not going to bind on each other. Okay, so I'm just going to take this now, and hopefully I can show you here. We're just going to take that and line that up, okay, so that these edges all line up. So there we go. Okay, grab some Scotch tape. And again, don't worry that there's a little bit of a gap maybe between the pieces of the plans. Once it's all on a piece of foam, it's not gonna make any difference. Okay, so we've got that taped on. And then taped along the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to put some more tape on this afterwards, just to make sure everything's good to go before I start laying it out on the foam. And then we'll take our other piece, which obviously is the mirror image. We'll take that and we'll do the exact same thing on the other side. Getting it lined up. Okay, so you can see, well, maybe you can't see. I'll show you here after I tape it on. Okay, some Scotch tape. All right, so that's that. And then that's there. Okay, so now essentially, like I showed you, now if I can find my little. There we go. So now essentially we've got this, which we're going to cut this out as one piece of foam. So while we've got this on the table, what we're going to make sure we do now is get yourself a ruler. That's actually not quite long enough, so I'm just going to use my my long straight edge here, and you're going to want to line it up obviously right along here where you've taped these on, because this is going to be your hinge line where your elevons are going to hinge. Okay, so we're going to draw a line on that now before we forget. Just line that up nice and straight. Okay, get myself a pen here. Okay. You don't necessarily need to draw it all the way along, but now I know where I'm going to cut my nice straight line. Okay, so this. So there we have it. So now this we're going to cut right along here. So again, this piece is actually going to stay as part of the back plate. It's going to be a fixed horizontal stabilizer, and then that's not going to get in the way when we're going to install our push rods for our elevons. And you know, it's probably going to add a little bit stability to the plane. I've built one Mig-29 this way, and I think it maybe did add a little bit of stability, but I think it just makes life easier, and you're still going to have tons and tons of moving control surface here, so that, you know, as your skills progress, you're going to be able to thrash this little bad boy around to your heart's content. Okay, so I'm just going to finish up getting all of my pieces all set up and taped and ready to go, and then we're going to get on to the next phase, which is actually laying the pieces of the plans out on the foam, and then we're going to start cutting foam, and it's going to start looking even more like a park jet. Okay, so I'll be right back with you.